June 24, 2026 was a special day in Venezuela. It was a national holiday, a time for people to celebrate their country's freedom from Spain. This date marks the Battle of Carabobo, a very important military victory that happened in 1821. Many families were at home that evening, enjoying the quiet time. Offices were closed and streets were calmer than usual. But then, just after 6 o'clock in the evening local time, the ground began to shake with great force. This was not a small tremble. It was the earth itself moving, something very old and powerful happening deep below. For millions of years, two huge plates, which are like giant pieces of the Earth's surface, had been slowly pressing against each other beneath northern Venezuela. Now that hidden force was released sharply. At 22:04 Universal Time on that same day, a strong earthquake suddenly hit near the town of San Felipe in Yaracuy state. Its magnitude was 7.2. This town is about 280 kilometers west of Caracas, the capital city. Only about 40 seconds later, another, even stronger earthquake struck. This second event was near Yumare and had a magnitude of 7.5. The time between the two quakes was so short that many people barely understood what was happening during the first shake before the second, more violent one began. It was a terrifying moment for everyone across a wide area. This double earthquake was a huge catastrophe.
The 7.5 earthquake was the biggest ever measured in Venezuela. In fact, it was the strongest the country had felt in more than 125 years. For many generations, Venezuela had been mostly calm from big earthquakes, and people had started to forget the risk. But on this day, in less than a minute, the earth showed its great power with two huge jolts, possibly the strongest since records began. Soon after, the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, gave a special warning. It was a red alert for possible deaths and economic losses. This type of alert is very rare. The USGS uses it only 1 or 2 times a year for the whole world. The message in this red alert was clear and chilling. This disaster would likely need help not just from Venezuela, but from other countries too. It showed that the damage was widespread and severe. This historic double quake, with its fast, powerful hits, was not the end of the story for Venezuela. It was just the start of a much bigger ordeal. The events of this night would push a fragile nation, already facing many problems, closer to the edge of collapse. This is the story of that night and what came next. 2. The Big Shake. The big shake that hit Venezuela was not just one earthquake, but 2 very strong ones. Scientists call this a doublet. This is a rare scientific event where 2 massive seismic events strike very quickly. The first earthquake, with a strength of 7.2, tore loose near the town of San Felipe in Yaracuy state.
It happened about 280 kilometers west of Caracas, the capital city. This first quake struck at a depth of about 13 to 22 kilometers underground. People barely had time to understand what was happening before the second, even bigger quake hit. Only about 40 seconds later, the ground shook again, much more violently. This second quake had a strength of 7.5. It was centered near the town of Yumare, a short distance from the first. This main earthquake was shallower, hitting at around 10 kilometers deep. A shallower earthquake usually causes much more powerful shaking on the surface, and this one was no different. The ground shaking was so strong that it reached a level scientists call violent. This kind of shaking can easily knock down weak walls and break support columns in buildings. The amount of energy released by this 7.5 magnitude main shock was tremendous. It was like 2.7 megatons of TNT exploding deep inside the Earth. This immense energy caused the Earth's crust to tear. Scientists estimated the underground rupture, or crack, stretched for about 90 kilometers. It was a huge movement of rock plates far below the surface. The seismic activity was instantly detected by a large network of monitoring stations around the world. 44 of these stations recorded the event with great accuracy. The U.S. Geological Survey quickly gave it a high significance score.
For a few hours on that day, Venezuela's earthquake was, from a geology point of view, the most important thing happening on Earth. The epicenter, where the quake started, was not an empty place. It was about 28 kilometers northwest of Montalban, an area with large oil refineries. The ground itself was violently convulsing, pushing and pulling everything above it. This made buildings sway and objects crash to the ground. After the main shocks, the Earth's crust in the direct rupture area finally stopped tearing. But the powerful forces unleashed by these two massive earthquakes did not simply disappear. Their devastating shock waves were still traveling through the planet's rock. These waves moved outward from San Felipe and Umaré, quickly covering long distances. 6 aftershocks, smaller quakes that followed the main ones, were felt strongly in Caracas within the first 2 hours. These aftershocks serve it as a grim warning. The biggest shockwaves, carrying the most destructive power, were just now reaching the densely populated capital city. While the ground had stopped tearing at the source, the real test for Caracas was only just beginning. Millions of people were about to experience the full, terrifying impact of the Big Shake. 3. A city falls. The people of Caracas felt the Earth's fury directly. In eastern districts, kitchens rattled and glass broke. An elderly woman, remembering the 1967 earthquake, said this one was much worse.
At Simón Bolívar International Airport, chaos began as debris fell and travelers rushed for safety. A bank worker saw a stairway crack and pull away, with objects raining down from the ceiling. Outside, people trying to run were thrown off balance by the strong shaking. The disaster hit Altamira and Los Palos Grandes hard. Many tall buildings were badly damaged or collapsed into rubble. The facade of a big bank building was reduced to debris. Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello spoke to the nation, confirming tremors across several states and alarming situations in Altamira. He urged drivers to clear roads for ambulances and asked people to remain outdoors due to aftershocks. In Chacao, a mayor reported 2 structures collapsed, 16 injured, and some deaths. Over 500 emergency workers began digging through damaged buildings. Hospitals quickly filled. At Hospital de Clínicas, staff worked double shifts, handling an overwhelming influx of injured patients. The hospital itself showed damage, with hanging ceiling panels and scattered plaster. Damage extended beyond the capital to Trujillo, Carabobo, Aragua, Miranda, and La Guaira. The main international airport suspended all flights due to facility damage. It was strange how destruction varied so greatly. Some neighborhoods, like parts of Altamira, suffered terrible damage, with entire buildings gone. Yet only a few blocks away, other areas only had broken glass and fallen objects.
This difference was due to the ground beneath each area. Parts of the city sat on soft soil, which made shaking more violent, like jelly. Other parts were on strong, shallow rock, which did not shake as much.
This meant families living close by could have very different experiences of the same earthquake. Then darkness fell. Power lines broke, and lights went out across vast parts of the city. Many people were trapped under fallen buildings, screaming for help from the dark. Communication systems also stopped working, leaving residents unsure about the safety of their families. It was a night when the capital city spilled onto its streets. Along the coast, a new kind of alarm began to sound. This alarm warned of a different danger, something unseen, threatening the islands and coastal areas nearby. It required urgent vigilance. 4. Fear from the sea. After the ground stopped its violent shaking, a new kind of alarm began. It came from the sea. The U.S. Tsunami Warning System quickly sent an advisory. This warning was for the Caribbean region. It said that strong, hazardous sea level changes and currents could happen. The threat was for coasts within about 300 kilometers of the earthquake's center. This included places like Puerto Rico, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Officials also noted that the Dutch Caribbean islands, Aruba, Curaçao, and Bonaire, might be affected. For a tense hour, many countries quickly started their emergency protocols. Civil protection agencies across the Caribbean activated their monitoring systems. Far to the south, Ecuador's risk management authorities began tracking the situation very closely. Even though their own oceanographic institute decided there was no threat to their coastline, they stayed alert. Colombia's government also moved fast to tell its own Caribbean coastal communities that no tsunami danger existed for their shores. Everyone waited, worried about powerful waves. On the same day, Earth seemed restless everywhere. An earthquake of magnitude 6.9 struck northeastern Japan. It happened almost simultaneously with the Venezuelan quakes. This was purely coincidental. The two events were not connected. They were separated by a whole ocean and continent. But their close timing reminded everyone that the planet's crust is always moving. Any given week, somewhere on Earth, the ground is shaking. It was a strange echo of the disaster unfolding in Venezuela, showing how active our world truly is. Then, the tsunami warning was finally canceled. The danger from the earthquake had passed. There was no longer a threat of destructive ocean waves. The geological violence that had damaged buildings in Caracas had not pushed enough of the seafloor, or it pushed it in a way that did not create big tsunamis. This brought a small moment of relief to the worried coastal areas. However, this relief was only for a short time. Experts knew that the true underlying geological monster beneath Venezuela had only just awakened. The large tectonic plates were still active. The powerful forces that caused the first earthquakes were still at work. This meant the recent disasters were likely just the beginning. The planet's restless nature was a clear warning. Much deeper problems were waiting, hidden under the Earth's surface, ready to show themselves again. 5. The danger below. Venezuela is far from the Pacific Ring of Fire. This is where most of the world's powerful earthquakes and volcanoes often occur. But Venezuela has its own hidden danger. It is a place where two huge pieces of the Earth's outer layer, called tectonic plates, meet and grind. One is the Caribbean plate, and the other is the much larger South American plate. These massive plates are always moving, but very slowly. They do not crash head-on. Instead, they push against each other in a sideways motion, creating what scientists call an oblique collision zone. This constant, slow pushing creates immense pressure and stress deep underground. This immense pressure builds up along special cracks in the Earth's crust.
These cracks are known as strike-slip faults. In these faults, two large blocks of rock slide horizontally past each other, like two hands rubbing. But they do not slide smoothly. They get stuck for long periods and tension quietly grows. The most important fault in Venezuela is the Boconó Fault. It is incredibly long, running for about 1,300 kilometers. It stretches along northern Venezuela, going through mountains like the Andes and past many important cities and the coast. This fault, connecting with others like the San Sebastian and El Pilar faults, forms a major seismic belt. Sadly, over 80% of Venezuela's population lives along this earthquake-prone area. For many years, very large earthquakes did not happen often in Venezuela. Compared to places like Japan or Chile, the country had long periods of quiet. This meant that generations of people might have felt safe, forgetting the dangers below. But this quiet time did not mean the danger was gone. It meant that stress quietly accumulates along the faults for many decades, even centuries. This slow buildup of energy, hidden from sight, waited for the right moment to release. This long time without a major disaster created a false sense of stability. It led people to believe that such big quakes were a problem for other countries, not theirs. This false sense of security, built over many generations, led directly to the tragic historical echoes of the past that will be explored next, showing how the nation was unprepared when the earth finally moved with such force. Ghosts of the past. Venezuela has a long and difficult history with earthquakes. Long before the 2026 disaster, the country experienced many powerful shakes that changed its future.
People still remember the famous earthquake of March 26, 1812. This was a very strong quake, estimated at a magnitude of 7.7. It hit on a holy day during Venezuela's war to be free from Spain. Cities like Caracas, La Guaira, Barquisimeto, San Felipe, and Mérida were badly damaged, almost the same areas hit in 2026. The ground shook so much that a new lake appeared, and landslides blocked a river. Many thousands of people died. At that time, some people said the earthquake was a punishment from God for wanting independence, but a great leader named Simón Bolívar did not agree. He famously said that if nature fought against them, they would fight nature too and make it obey. This showed his strong defiance and helped the fighters continue their push for freedom. The 1812 quake helped end the fragile First Republic. It truly shows how natural disasters can make political problems much bigger rather than stopping them. Later, in July 29, 1967, another significant earthquake struck the Caracas Valley and the northern coast. This one had a magnitude of 6.3. It claimed numerous lives and caused extensive damage to the capital. After this quake, the government started a special group to study earthquakes and how to build safer buildings. Experts learned something very important that is now basic to earthquake building everywhere. The type of soil under a building can dramatically make the shaking stronger or weaker. This is called deep sediment amplification. 4 very tall buildings, more than 10 stories high, fell down in areas with deep sediment. 3 decades after that, in 1997, a magnitude 6.9 earthquake happened near the coastal town of Cariaco. About 80 people were killed and more than 500 were injured. The collapse of a single school building caused many of these deaths. This sad event showed how important it is to make schools specifically safe from earthquakes.
The 2026 earthquake was even stronger than these past events, a truly rare occurrence. It was the most powerful earthquake Venezuela had experienced since careful measurements began, even eclipsing the legendary 1812 catastrophe in raw magnitude. This long history of warnings, including creating modern building codes after the 1967 disaster, should have prepared the country better. However, despite all these lessons from the past, the cities were still fatally unprepared for what was to come. The vulnerability of many structures remained, like ghosts from the past that no one listened to. The ground had remembered its history, but had Venezuela. Weak walls. Venezuela's cities were not ready for such a big earthquake. For years, the country saw rapid urbanization as many people moved to places like Caracas. This growth was fast, but often unplanned. Homes were built quickly and not always safely. The nation also faced a long economic collapse that lasted over a decade.
This meant hyperinflation, a healthcare system that was already struggling, and millions of Venezuelans leaving the country. All these problems made the earthquake's impact much worse. Many informal homes, known as barrios, were built on steep hillsides. These houses were often made from cheap, simple materials like unreinforced bricks and mud. They did not follow proper building codes, making them very weak. When the earth shook with such force, these homes crumbled easily. But it was not just informal housing that failed. Even newer, formal buildings often had problems. Architects and engineers sometimes made oversights in their designs. They did not fully understand how parts like walls or decorations could affect a building's strength during an earthquake. So structures that seemed to follow the rules still behaved badly. Just 6 months before the quake, Venezuela had a major political change. The U.S. military, under President Donald Trump's administration, carried out a big operation called Absolute Resolve. This led to the capture of the former leader, Nicolás Maduro. In the confusion, Delcy Rodriguez became the interim president. Her new government was in its first year, still trying to gain full control and reconnect with the global economy. It was a very fragile time for the country, with many nations still unsure about supporting the new leadership. Now, this financially ruined and politically isolated government faced an impossible task. The U.S. Geological Survey estimated the earthquake's economic damage could be as high as $100 billion. This huge amount was about 1/5 of Venezuela's total money made in a year. The government had to rebuild countless homes, fix a broken healthcare system, and manage its delicate return to the world stage. Millions of lives hung in the balance, waiting to see if this weak government could find a way forward. After the dust. After the earth stopped shaking, the real work began. An automatic system called pager system quickly showed a terrifying picture. It predicted there was a 44% chance that between 10,000 and 100,000 people could have died. This red alert meant the disaster was very big. It would need help not just from Venezuela, but from many countries around the world. The system gave this wide, uncertain number fast to mobilize global resources quickly. Getting this help was not easy. Venezuela was in a difficult political situation. Just months before, the U.S. military, under the Trump administration, had acted in Caracas. This led to a new, temporary government, known as the interim administration. Many countries did not fully agree on its power. Brazil, China, and Russia, for example, strongly disagreed with the U.S. action. These disagreements created geopolitical hurdles for emergency humanitarian aid.
Deciding how to give help became a complex political puzzle.
Also, the world was already busy with other big problems. A conflict involving Iran and an Ebola outbreak in Africa competed for global attention and money. The earthquake showed that natural dangers hit hardest where people are already struggling. Buildings in poor areas, often built with weak materials, collapsed easily. This tragic situation showed the country's great vulnerability. The total damage was estimated to be very high, possibly more than $100 billion. This was a massive amount for a country already facing deep economic problems. Venezuela will have to rebuild its shattered cities. But a big question remains. Will the country truly learn from its past mistakes and build stronger, safer homes and cities? Or will the severe lack of money and ongoing political issues force them to rebuild quickly, leading to the same dangers in the future? What do you think will happen as Venezuela tries to recover from this historic disaster?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.